Hey again, this is Misty Galvan with the Which Way podcast. I was not planning on doing an episode today. And honestly, I I wanted to kind of put myself out there and say that the reason I decided to do a podcast is because I'm not doing fabulous today. I know that sounds crazy. Most people want to wait until they're doing fabulously to do a podcast and to maybe talk about certain subjects. And I really wanted to kind of put myself out there. I used to be that way, and I want to be vulnerable with you guys and honest, and I kind of want to talk about things in the moment because I feel like there's much more to be discussed and much more that comes to light whenever you do that. And today is just not a fabulous day for me, and I'm going to do the absolute best I can to put out some really great energy so that you're not feeling all down if you're listening to this podcast. So I'm going to do the best that I can to do that, and I hope that um, maybe we can learn some things by the end of this episode together. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was anxiety, and not just anxiety, but also intuition and how to tell the difference between the two. It is something that I still struggle with. It's a learning process for me. I try to have a certain level of awareness about the anxiety that I struggle with, and that does help a lot, just having that general awareness. But there are also a couple of other tools that I try to constantly remind myself of and think of when I'm having a moment of, is this anxiety or is this, intuition? And I, 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 I don't want to I don't want to get into too much of it, but I do struggle with anxiety a lot, especially in the last couple of years. Anxiety has really, really gone up for me to the level of panic attacks. I think I had my very first panic attack actually when I was pregnant with my youngest, which he's almost 7 now. But the anxiety itself has just gotten so much worse. And I always know when I'm struggling with a moment of, okay, this is anxiety, because it could be something that's, just kind of out there, like, it's time to go to bed at night and everybody's in a great mood. Everybody's doing really well. We're tucking everybody in. We're saying good night. We're turning off all the lights. Everything's great. And then I lay my head on the pillow and all of a sudden, um, like my whole body is overcome with this. What if the house catches on fire and I can't get to my kids? Or, what if, because of where the kids' bedrooms are located in the house, um, with where the master is, what if somebody breaks in through a certain side of the house and they're where the kids are and I can't get to them before they get to the kids? Like, it's things like, I don't want to say that, obviously, that that's unrealistic, because those things do happen and there are people that have experienced those things, and so it is not to be taken lightly. But it is also not something that you should be living your life with every single day when you try to go to bed. That's not that's not normal. It's I know that there are people that say, oh, it's totally normal to do that. It's totally normal to worry about your kids. You're a parent. It's what you do. But not, I think, to the level and to the degree that I struggle with it sometimes. Sometimes I have insomnia and I do not sleep at all, and I will be up for almost 40 hours before I can finally go to sleep. And usually when I do finally feel like I can go to sleep, it's because the kids are at school and I feel like, okay, they're not in the house. So if something were to happen in the house, you know, I'm I'm just here by myself, and so I can tend to sleep. And now, even in more recent years, in this day and age, it's even a scary thing for them to be at school, um, for obvious reasons. So there's just a lot that goes around, contributing to anxiety, and it's different for different people. And sometimes I am, I'll say I'm affected by large crowds, or large crowds in an enclosed space. The combination of those two is really like a hard no for me. Um, If it's outdoors and there's a lot of people, I tend to be able to deal with it a little better as long as I can move away from people. But I really do have a hard time being around a lot of people. I don't like to be touched by people, although I recently learned that there's another reason for that. We'll dive into that in another episode. But I feel like there are often times where I need to be able to rely on my intuition, and I don't know that I can do that because of the anxiety. And so struggling between what's just anxious panic attacks versus what is, my intuition, um, it's very difficult for me. So there's a couple of things that I do that I kind of want to go over and talk about. And I would absolutely love to hear from anybody who's listening to this podcast who has any insights, any opinions, any thoughts. If you struggle with the same, if you've figured out how to work through the same, any of that, I would really love to hear from you because I am constantly learning. I do not believe at all that I will ever, ever know everything. So I welcome anyone and anything that you have to say. I would love to hear about it. One of the things that I try to tell myself when I'm in a moment, we'll just say I'm in a moment and I'm all of a sudden I'm thinking or feeling something. One of the things that I try to remind myself is first to breathe. I know that it sounds really everybody says that, just breathe, but it really works. Just bring a mindfulness to your breath. And I just take a deep breath and I think, okay, what are my feelings surrounding this? And when I tend to be able to answer that with strong feelings, like I have a strong emotion, I have a sickness in my stomach, or chest pains, or I feel like I can't breathe, or there's like a physical sort of reaction to whatever it is that I'm thinking. I tend to try to tell myself, this is your anxiety. Anxiety comes on and it brings all of these uh, physical sort of feelings with it. Um, and it's kind of like a panic. It's kind of scattered. You don't necessarily have to have a panic attack, but it just feels chaotic. It feels all over the place, and it's like a strong emotion. And I have learned that when I look back at instances where I got moments of my intuition telling me something, that those tended to be situations where there wasn't so much emotion involved. There may still be emotion involved depending on what it is that your intuition is telling you. But it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't this overwhelming feeling of panic. It was just, it's here. You know it. You don't necessarily know how you know it, but you just know it. And it's just this more calm feeling that you get. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that I use to try to differentiate between what is my anxiety and what is my intuition. It doesn't always work, but it mostly works. And the other thing that I really struggle with is um, really just kind of relying on my intuition and being able to say, no, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm getting. Um, the thing for me is that I don't necessarily know what it is. So I'm trying to think of an example. Um, as a parent, when one of my children starts acting a little differently, for me, I tend to know, like I can feel it, I can read the signs, I can kind of get this, they're going to be sick, and they're not feeling well. They're coming down with something, and they'll say, "No, I'm fine. I feel great." What are you talking about? You're crazy. And then, they'll wake up the next morning and be like, "Oh, I don't feel good," and they have a fever. It's kind of like you pick up on all of the senses around you. You pick up on the history that you have there. You pick up on everything, and so you just kind of know as a mom that this is coming. And it's not necessarily an emotional thing. Your kid's just sick, and you do what you got to do, and you take care of it. However, there are times where I will get like an intuitive feeling and it just feels off. Something feels off. It doesn't feel right. Something feels off, and it's not necessarily a panic. It's just a very calm feeling, and you just go, something feels off, and you don't necessarily know what it is. And that's where I really struggle, because if you don't know what it is, that's when your anxiety can start kicking in and saying, okay, let's make up stuff. So you still have to try to differentiate between the two, because you're working off of your intuition, where you know something is not right, you know something is off, but it could be minor, it could be small, um, or it could be big. But when you also have anxiety, if you don't know what your intuition is trying to tell you, then your anxiety starts coming and going, "Oh, I know what it is. Guess what? This is what it is. You better buckle up, because this is like the worst case scenario," kind of thing. And that's where I still really struggle. I struggle so bad there, because I will feel like something is off, something is not right. And if there are other individuals involved in that, something's off, something's not right, and you bring it up to that person or group of people, if they all kind of shut you down and go, "You're crazy. There's nothing," like there's nothing. Um, it's really difficult if there is something and they're shutting you down and they're making you doubt your intuition. That for me is like one of the worst things that you could possibly do to me, is when I'm telling you that I know something and you are telling me that I'm wrong, but you're lying to me. It's that's a whole nother episode, but I really have zero tolerance for people that are not honest. Um, for me, even though honesty might hurt, I would much rather have that, and I will have a much deeper respect for you, um, if you're completely honest, versus, trying to be, maybe not necessarily lying, but just maybe little dishonest to save my feelings. I will lose respect for you, in that manner, and I will also not believe you in the future. It's very difficult for me to believe anybody once they've, you know, not been honest with me, especially if it's continued to happen. And I feel like my intuition is very important to me. It's a very important part of what I do and who I am. And if you are actively working towards making me doubt that, um, I don't know how you can be a part of my life. And so I really struggle with that. I struggle between, anxiety and intuition. I struggle with how to approach a situation if I am feeling something, especially if I don't know what it is. If I have like an intuitive thought or intuitive feeling, and I come and I say, "Hey, look, this is how I'm feeling about this. So I need you to be careful when you go to work today, or I need you to be careful when you're out on the road today." Whatever it is, that's one thing. And I feel like, okay, it kind of goes away. Like I said, I don't feel great about you being on the road today, and I want you to be extra careful. And just being able to verbalize that to whomever I'm talking to and have them say to me, "You got it. I will be very careful," because they trust me and they trust what I'm telling them. That already kind of just I don't wanna say makes it go away, but it just kind of lessens it, and it's like, "Okay, I my intuition came up, and I did what I was supposed to do. I delivered this message, and now it's kind of subsided." Um, but when it's something that comes up and you don't know what it is that's making you feel that way, and you don't know why, it just kind of keeps gnawing at you. Um, and it's either it's either because you are not able to deliver the message that you feel like you need to deliver, or it's because you don't know what it is, and so you're just sitting there with this feeling of unease, and you're feeling something's off, something's not right, and then you start making up what it is. And then if you start making up what it is and you approach whoever it is that you're feeling this way about, um, if you're, I guess, wrong about specifically what it is, because you're trying to guess and they're telling you no, then it feels like, okay, well, I'm telling you that something is off and you're telling me no, so you must be lying. So this is like a huge, huge struggle. I feel like I cannot give the best advice for that and how to deal with that. If you are like me and you're struggling with that, I would love to hear from you. If you are like me and you have struggled with it, but maybe you've gotten a handle on it, I would absolutely love to hear from you and what you did to get a handle on it. Because it just feels very uh, it's discombobulating, and it starts being something that I obsess over. Oh, by the way, I also have obsessive compulsive disorder. So that manifests in various ways for me, but this is one of the ways. It's intuition, not knowing what your intuition's trying to tell you. So anxiety steps in and starts making up the story. And then once anxiety steps in and makes up the story, which obviously has to be worst case scenario, then you obsess over it and you keep obsessing, obsessing, obsessing over it until you finally get what it is that you need to get, which is either your confirmation or you have your absolute proof that whatever it is that you're obsessing over is actually happening or not happening. And so that's like my life in a nutshell. It's very exhausting, uh, but it is obviously something that I'm very aware of and something that I actively work on. Again, just kind of going back into anxiety and intuition, I feel like um, the just the one of the main focuses of distinguishing between the two is that again, intuition is very in the moment. It's very present. It has it's just like a, "Hey, I just wanna," it's like that soft little, friend of yours that's always with you, just says, "Hey, I just wanna let you know something's not something's not right. Maybe I maybe I don't know what it is yet, but but I'm just letting you know something's kind of off." And it's sort of like this calm feeling, and then the anxiety, again, to differentiate between the 2, anxiety comes in and goes, "Oh my god, it's gotta be this. It's gotta be this." Um, and so when I'm having that, I really try to, be present in the moment with myself, focus on my breathing. I will have conversations in my head. Yes, I do. I do that with myself. I will talk to myself and say, "No, we're going to calm down a little bit. We're not going to overreact. This is what we're going to do." And there are times where sometimes the anxiety it takes over and it is a little much for me to handle on my own. And so I will try to reach out um, to either my wife or to, my therapist or somebody that I can say, "Hey, I need you to talk me off a ledge," basically, because I know that something's off, but my anxiety is giving me something that is insanely off the wall. Um, or maybe it's not insanely off the wall, and that's why it's so triggering because it is something that is potentially there, but you have no way of knowing that or not. Um, Anxiety is very demanding of your time and your attention. It will absorb everything if you let it, and it will run away with you if you let it. And a lot of the physical ailments that you might be experiencing could be quite possibly attributed to anxiety. So, this is definitely a topic that I hope we can touch on again in the future. And I hope that I have more words of wisdom rather than more questions about it. But again, if anybody's listening that um, is in that same boat and has any advice or opinions or reading material or anything you want to share, I would absolutely love to hear it. I definitely am always a work in progress and would absolutely love to know what you do to help differentiate between anxiety and intuition and maybe learn how to trust in your intuition more and help the anxiety subside. So until next time, I will see you all again soon. Have a great week.